Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our latest edition of 2debate.net, our podcast of debates. I am Dirk, and my co-host is Sebastian. Hi, Sebastian. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing okay. I'm jet lagged, actually, because I've just landed in Jakarta, Indonesia last night. So we're again recording this at distance.
So you're jet lagged this time. I was jet lagged last time. Let's try to be equally leveled. I get a chance at last. We will today debate the following motion. Should Turkey be part of the EU? Today, Sebastian's going to argument for the motion, that is, Turkey being part of the EU. And I'm going to have the pleasure to argue against the motion. Also, by the flip of a coin, we decided that Sebastian goes first. Is that about right, Sebastian? I think I summed it up properly, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
Perfect. And today we're gonna have a heated debate, I think, because it's going about politics, right? So politics always stirs emotion in us.
I think we have emotions regardless of the topic, Dick. I think whether it's politics, technology, business.
Okay, let's shift that. We are debating now if we have emotions.
Okay,
yes
should we have emotions?
Should we have emotions? Is that a good idea? Who is for, who is against? No. So, Turkey should be part of the EU. Sebastian for, Dirk against, Sebastian first. Are you ready, Sebastian?
I am totally ready to start with my little speech.
You're practically born ready, right?
I'm completely born ready.
Okay, let's do this. Sebastian goes first and argues for the motion.
Karşılama, Dirk. This is Turkish for welcome, Dirk, because Turkey should be part of the EU and have many arguments in favor. The first one of which is the EU is mostly about trade anyway. I wish it was more than trade, honestly, but it's an economic union before anything else. And Turkey is a dynamic and big market, 75 million people. So having free trade with Turkey would be fantastic. 50% of Turkish exports go to the EU, and Turkey is the 7th largest market for the EU. So clearly, for me, the main argument is from an economy standpoint, it makes a lot of sense. And we can talk about immigration as well, considering that Turkey is very young and the rest of Europe is aging. We're getting old, Dick. And I think we need to think about the future and the economy for positive results on the economy. And we can refer back to another debate that we had on the topic on the free flow of movement, the free flow of people and trade. Another argument is, and that's slightly connected to the previous one, by making the EU bigger, you make the EU have more influence on world politics. It's a mechanical thing, the bigger it is, especially since we've lost the UK. Well, might as well take another one in the mix, and Turkey is a big one. So let's have a nation which will help influence not only world politics, but also regional politics. As we know, Turkey is very influential in the Middle East, for good or for worse, but this is a good way to align ourselves, our policies towards the Middle East. And finally, I want to go back on the energy, on the economy aspect. And I was saying energy because this is what I had in mind. I forgot this aspect. And it's the fact that we can't rely on Russia anymore. Russia is being maybe too difficult to deal with, and we need new energy corridors. Turkey offers that opportunity for Europe. So we have to be practical on this economy aspect. And that's it for my little 2 minutes.
Well spoken.
Now, it's Dirk's turn. Let's hear his argument against the motion.
So in your book, Turkey and the EU expansion is mostly about the markets. And I agree that is an important part of it. Also, I would say it is about values and shared culture. And even if it would be economy alone, I would disagree because, well, in the perfect world, we have free trade and an economic zone that spans the whole planet. Still, that is not the case. And it's also not about the market only, it's also about the costs. So bringing in another partner into the European Union is associated with additional costs and friction first. It's an investment to take. And that investment gets all the bigger if you have to bridge cultural and legal barriers first. And the Turkey system, being in a large country like this, has been built on top of different practices than the rest of the European continent. And that is my third argument. Actually, Turkey is not part of Europe. Turkey is mostly part of Asia. And if we bring Turkey to the European Union, we all of a sudden share a border with Syria, Iran, Iraq, all countries where we not necessarily want to have a border with. And if we want to have a border with them, it brings us to additional problems, geopolitical-wise, economic-wise. And it's not the Turkish people that immigrate into the EU. All of a sudden, we discuss immigration issues on that borders too. So my point is, having Turkey as a very close partner to the European Union would be a perfect situation. Having it integrated costs more than it brings.
Next up, Sebastian. Let's hear his rebuttal.
So you talk about shared culture. It's interesting because what you're not saying when you say shared culture is basically that the EU should be a club of Christian countries or should be like-minded. But honestly, this is not exactly the signal that I think we want to send to the outside world. We want to show that we can integrate different cultures, different religions, and we know the EU is already very diverse, from Portugal to Greece to Ireland to Sweden. We're not talking about the same culture, honestly, across all these countries already. If anything, Turkey is the only Muslim democracy. So it actually sends a very positive signal. And I would add another thing to it is, and you're German, you know this better than anyone else, Turkey is already in part of Germany. This is how many millions of Turkish immigrants. So you already have part of Turkey in Germany. It's not Asia, as far as I know. It's already Western Europe. On this aspect of geography, while I'm half joking about it, Istanbul is also on the European side, in one of the biggest cities. In fact, let me mention something, because this is also slightly related to economy, but the Istanbul airport is going to be the biggest airport in the world. 150 million passengers. They're rebuilding it. And this is, again, at the border between, indeed, Asia and Europe. Do we want to miss that for Europe? Do we want to impose barriers between the biggest airport, one of the biggest countries in the region, and the rest of the EU? I don't think so. If anything, it's a bridge between Islam and the other religions. It's a bridge between Europe and the Middle East. And in fact, Turkey, on the security aspect, has the biggest army of any country in that region, including the EU. So if anything, we could actually make use of that. And the fact that we would have borders with Syria changes nothing to the fact that Syrian refugees come across Turkey right now, for instance, and into Europe, or take boats or whatever. So we have this problem anyway today. So if anything, we'd make things stronger by having a direct partner as part of the EU. You mentioned it's a cost. And on this, it's interesting because as far as I know, Portugal and Romania are part of the EU. But Romania, to take this example, their GDP per capita is less than $10,000 per year. Do you know how much it is in Turkey? 10% more. Turkey is richer than Romania, which is in the EU. So I am not sure the cost is actually going to be at a disadvantage in the case of Turkey. Otherwise, we would have used that argument for other countries. And in fact, we talked about culture and values, and I want to go back to this because I'm thinking of Romania, but I'm pretty sure that we'll have Bosnia, for instance, at one point in the EU. Clearly in the geography of the EU and of Europe, and Bosnia is Muslim. Are we going to say no because they're Muslim? I'm not sure you want to have that stand either. So, to summarize, I think values, we want to show that we're open-minded, and I don't think it's about that anyway, as I said before. I think it's about the economy. Secondly, it's not costly because you have poorer nations currently in the EU. And thirdly, borders with Syria, if anything, it may actually well help having borders with countries which are difficult. And we need to think long term in terms of having a global policy for the next decades, not just because we have a refugee crisis today.
Dirk, let's hear it.
Let me take that one by one. So the GDP that you mentioned, it's 13,000 euro right now, which is less than half the EU average. If you combine that with 70-something million that live in Turkey, that makes Turkey not only one of the poorer countries that join the EU, it's also one of the largest. And by 2050, projections say it would be the largest country in the EU. So that is quite a bit of an expense that we have to shoulder. Even if you argue with Bulgaria and Portugal, come on, you're not comparing Bulgaria and Portugal with Turkey, are you? It may be equally low, but it's much less, and already we struggle with dealing with things like Greece and Portugal and Bulgaria. So the question becomes, how many underdeveloped economies do we want to pull into the EU before they solve their problems first? Second, having immigration and having people of different cultures. No, of course, I don't want to block anyone from the EU because they have a different religion. Still, in Turkey, we talk about a completely different ballpark because they are majority Muslim and because they tend to fall into reflexes out of that heritage. We can observe that right now by looking at Erdogan, by looking at the current changes. And yes, it is a democracy, but it certainly starts feeling less and less that way in the past months. And I'm not sure if we as EU really are prepared to deal with that downfall. Thirdly, as I mentioned, 78 million people right now in Turkey. Pulling that in, combined with the other two, Turkey would be a very powerful player in the EU. And that would not only change how we do things in the EU, it also would potentially stir up substantial unrest. Right now, the European Union is struggling as it is. The European Union has to get their value system in order. Right now, we are not even a shared value system, as you can see, unfortunately, looking at the refugee crisis. Pulling in a partner as large, as complex, as culturally different, as also underdeveloped economy-wise as Turkey is opening issues all over the place, and I'm not convinced that the EU can actually deal with it right now. So I repeat myself, I think it's not a good idea to have Turkey as part of the EU. It should be a close ally. It should be a close partner. We should be as friendly, as cooperative as we can. But pulling it into the EU just for the sake of having a large partner that we add to the list is not doing any good.
Final statements. Sebastian goes first.
Spain in the 80s joined the EU. It was poor. And a lot of Spaniards emigrated. In the 90s, there was high growth in Spain, and the trend was reversed. People went to Spain. Now it's actually a net importer of people. There's more immigration within Spain than the opposite. So actually, when you have a high growth economy like Turkey, you're not going to have people move out of Turkey. Maybe you're going to have Europeans go to Turkey. Secondly, democracy. Look at Poland. Poland is part of the EU. Is it going the right way in terms of democracy with the current government? I don't think so. Thirdly, you say he's going to be a big player, and I think your worry because you're German and it's going to be as big as Germany. Well, yes, let's give a fair representation to people who are part of the table, who want to play game. The UK wants to leave, fine, they can leave. Turkey wants to be in, let's have them in. In any way, it takes a long process for them to be part of the EU. It's chapter by chapter to negotiate and make sure that they comply. So once they comply, why would we limit them? And my conclusion is this one. Is it Turkey that's not ready, or is it the EU that's not ready? Teşekkür ederim. Thank you in Turkish.
Dirk.
You say, or you ask the question, is it Turkey that's not ready, or is it EU that's not ready? Well, that's not the motion, Sebastian. It's not the question who is ready and who is not. And if one of the two partners is not ready, then well, I rest my case. And it doesn't matter if Germany is worried because Germany is the largest player. Right now, Germany is a developed economy. It's paying into EU households. It's paying debts for others. Yes, it's taking out its fair share out of the EU wealth as well. But with Turkey, we would actually be for a substantial amount of time paying because they are just in a growth area, because they right now have to change a lot of things, because there is a cultural friction that needs also to be paid for. So again, unless both partners are ready, and clearly right now they are not, I conclude Turkey should not be part of the EU, at least not now. So that was it for today's debate. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to visit us on todebate.net, the website to our projects where you can vote for the motion. Let us know if we change your mind. Let us know if there have been other arguments on your mind we could have used. or other tactics in which we could have crafted our debating style.
But this is debate number 8, if I'm not mistaken. I know you have not won any debate so far. I understand that, but come on, just. And I'm shutting up because I don't know if you're on mute. Oh no, you're talking. You're stunned. I know you're stunned. You wonder how you're gonna.
The main argument in my book for Turkey being part of EU, by the way, is a geopolitical one. I much rather have Turkey on our side than on the Russian side, for instance. And I personally much rather share the border with Syria, Iraq and Iran, because then we have no way of hiding the atrocities that as Europe we are doing at those borders. Right now, having paid Turkey to deal with the refugee crisis, for instance, is our way out of that cognitive dissonance. So all of a sudden in Europe we can say, hey, we are so friendly, we take in, especially Germany, we took in so many refugees, we are the good guys. And then pay millions and billions of euros to Turkey to build up the wall that we are not openly promoting. It's like, we are like Trump, just not saying it. We build a wall in Turkey, or we pay Turkey to build the wall for us. So having them in the EU would force us to face that. We would need to deal with that ourselves, because it would be part of the EU all of a sudden. So that would be my argument for it. And the argument against is, well, I'm not sure if we can actually handle it.
I think the way you said it is actually very good, and I did not bring it up as clearly as you did. Maybe using Russia as a possible threat if Turkey would go closer to Russia rather than Western Europe, or Europe, let's say. And the second thing is about forcing us to deal with the problems instead of just either paying for it or delaying it, because problems will inevitably come back to us, or asking someone else to take care of it, when especially in this case, I'm not even sure we can completely trust the Turkish authorities to deal with things effectively sometimes, right? Not all the time. Anyway, I like your arguments. Russia, we're dealing with our own problems, and this cost aspect could be maybe mitigated if we change the rules of how the EU is running.